Hey everybody. So let's go ahead and jump into and cover Act 2, Scene 3. So yesterday in our last video, the prologue to Scene 2, the big thing that comes out of the Scene 2, the balcony scene, is going to start setting up what we're working with today. And that is that Romeo and Juliet have professed their love to each other. They've talked to each other, professed their love to each other. And Juliet says, listen, if you mean this and you really want to get married, then I'm going to send somebody to you at around 9 o'clock tomorrow. You tell them when and where we're going to get married, and let's go with it. So Romeo ends saying he needs to go speak with his ghostly father. So that is going to be his friend Friar Laurence. Friar is a monk, he's a holy man. So that is what we're going to work with today. Is Friar Romeo is going to go talk to Friar Laurence. So we talked about timeline yesterday. That was we start the play on Sunday. We are now this scene is going to open on Monday morning. So all right, so we start off and Friar Lawrence is talking like he's working on some plants. That's a big thing. Friar Lawrence loves plants. So this will work in later into the play. But Friar Lawrence is in his room working with his garden. The gray eyed morn smiles on the frowning night, checkering the eastern clouds with streaks of light, and flecked darkness like a drunkard reels from forth day's path in Titan's fiery wheels. Now, ere the sun advance his burning eye, the day to cheer and night's dank dew to dry, I must upfill this osier cage of ours with baleful weeds and precious juice flowers. The earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. What is her burying? Grave that is her womb. And from her womb, children of diverse kind, we sucking on her natural bosom find. Many for many virtues excellent, none but for some, and yet all different. Oh, mickle is the powerful grace that lies in herbs, plants, stones, and their true qualities. For naught so vile that on the earth doth live, but to the earth some special good doth give. Nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. Virtue itself turns vice, being misapplied, and vice sometime by actions dignified. So, a few things we're going to talk about in this scene really quickly. The first thing is rhyme scheme, because one of the questions is going to ask you about rhyme scheme. So, one of the things that we've got here with our rhyme scheme is when we start with poetry, rhyme scheme always starts with A. And when we're talking about rhyme scheme, we're going with the very last word in the line. So this one here, we've got night, light, reels, wheels, eyes, dry. So what we've got here, let me see if I can do this. Okay. So we've got our whiteboard here, and let's look at our lines. So we've got, let's see, we've got night. Let's see. Where'd my whiteboard go? So, all right, so we've got the word night, and then we've got the word light, then reels, and wheels. So our first line is always A when we're talking about rhyme scheme. Then what we do is we look at the next in line and see, does it rhyme with a line that came before it? If it does, it gets the same letter. So light rhymes with night, so it also gets an A. Reels does not rhyme with night, so it gets the next letter available to us, which is B. Wheels rhymes with reels, so it gets a B. So as we go through here, if we look at our lines, so our inline rhymes, we've got night, which is an A, we've got light, which is an A, we've got reels, which is a B, we've got wheels, which is a B. I does not rhyme with any of those, so it gets the next letter, C. Dry rhymes with I, so it gets C. Hours does not rhyme with any of that, so it would get D. Flowers rhymes with hours, so it gets D, so on and so forth. So our next line, like tomb, doesn't rhyme with any of those, so it would get E. Womb, kind, find, excellent ends with that ENT. Different ends with that ENT. So each line rhymes in couplet. So that means that each line comes in a couplet, comes in a pair. We don't get that a lot with the rest of the play. So when it asks one of the questions on your sheet that you have to fill out for this section, being what's so special about the rhyme scheme in this scene, it's that it's rhyming couplets. It has an A, A, B, B, C, C rhyme. That's the answer to that question. So we can go ahead and move our whiteboard and we can go back to the play. All right. So the biggest thing, he's talking about a lot of plants. He's talking about how plants are born out of the world. But the important things is right down in here. For not so vile that on earth does live, but that the earth some special good doth give. So he's like, there's nothing so evil on the earth that some good doesn't come of it. Like there's nothing that's purely evil. Even the most seemingly evil thing will have some good come from it. Nor aught so good, but strained from that fair use, revolts from true birth, stumbling on abuse. And there's nothing so good that if you abuse it, some bad can't be done with it. Virtue turns to vice being misapplied, and vice sometime by action dignified. So it's like vices. Vices are your bad habits, like drinking or smoking would be a vice. So virtue, those are your good actions. So virtue can turn to vice if you misapply it, if you misuse it. And vice can also sometimes, in the right chances, be dignified. It can also be a good thing. So that's the big things to take away from this, because the idea that good actions can have bad consequences and bad actions can have good consequences. With that, we're going to understand a lot of Friar Lawrence's ideologies and the reasons that he does things in this play. So Romeo comes in. Within the infant rind of this small flower, so he's got a little flower, poison hath residence and medicine power. For this, being smelt, with that part cheers each part, being tasted, stays all senses with the heart. Two such opposed kings encamp them still, in man as well as herbs, grace and rude will. So he pulls up a flower and he's like, look at this one. He goes, it's both poisonous and medicine. If I smelt it, if you This one here, like if we look at our translation, it says our smell. Smelt, it's probably using a different word of use of the word smelt, which is to like boil down to its essences. Um, if you are, uh, I think about this because I've been playing a lot of Minecraft while we're on the quarantine social distancing thing. If you played Minecraft, whenever you dig up gold and iron ore, you have to put them in a furnace to get rid of all the rock, and then you get the iron. That's smelting. The idea of getting rid of all the impurities and just leaving the pure thing. So if you smelt it, if you boil it down, if you reduce it, you get the medicine. But if you eat it, if you eat this flour, it's poison. You'll die. Both things, like life and death, are in the same flour. And he says, in man as well as herbs, grace and goodwill. So he's like, that's true with man and it's true with plants. Where the worser is predominant, full soon the canker death eats up that plant. So he's like, when evil is more dominant, death will soon kill it all. And Romeo comes in. Good morrow, father. Good morning. Benedicite, what early tongue so sweet saluteth me? Young son, it argues a distempered head, so soon bid good morrow to thy bed. Care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. But where unbruised youth with unstuffed brain doth couch his limbs, there golden sleep doth reign. Therefore thy earliness doth me assure thou art uproused by some distemperature. Or, if not so, then here I hit it right. Our Romeo hath not been in bed tonight. So, Benedicite, he says, God bless you. And then he's like, who's talking to me so early in the morning? What tongue so sweet saluted me? And he's like, son, young man, it argues a distempered head so soon to bid good morrow to thy bed. He's like, for you to be up so early, it shows that you've got problems going on in your head. You are worried. And old men worry, so care keeps his watch in every old man's eye, and where care lodges, sleep will never lie. So it's like old men worry, and because of that, they can't sleep. But where unbruised youth with unstuffed brain does couch his limbs, there golden sleep doth reign. So he's like, but young men don't worry about anything, therefore they sleep wonderfully. So you're either up so early because you're worried, or if I've got this one right, it's got to be the answer. You haven't been to bed tonight. You've been up all night. And Romeo says, the last is true. The sweeter rest was mine. He's like, absolutely. I have not been in bed tonight. I've had something better than sleep. Friar Laurence immediately goes to like young man up all night saying he's had something better than sleeping. And he says, God pardon sin. Wast thou with Rosaline? So he's like, oh my God, God forgive you if you've sinned. Were you with Rosaline? Is that why you've been up all night? And Romeo says, with Rosaline, my ghostly father? No, I forgot that name, and that name's woe. So he's like, with Rosaline? No, no, no. I forgot about her, and I forgot about all the sadness that she gave. Friar Laurence says, that's my good son. But where hast thou been then? He's like, well, that's good. However, where have you been then? I'll tell thee ere thou ask it me again. I have been feasting with mine enemy, where on a sudden one hath wounded me that's by me wounded. Both are remedies within thy help and holy physic lies. I bear no hatred, blessed man, for lo, my intercession likewise steads my foe. So Romeo says, I'll tell you before you ask me again. I've been feasting with my enemy. And suddenly, one of them wounded me, and I've wounded them. But you can help us both. So, and he's like, I carry no hatred. I bear no hatred, blessed man. I carry no hatred, holy man. For lo, my intercession likewise steads my foe. He goes, so the question, what I'm going to ask you for, it isn't out of hatred because it helps them as much as it helps me. And Friar Laurence says, be plain, good son, and homely in that drift. Riddling confession finds but riddling shrift. So he's like, speak plainly and make your message clear. If you're confusing me when you're confessing, you're going to get a very confusing response to it. Romeo says, then plainly know my dear heart's love is set on fair daughter of rich Capulet. As mine on hers, so hers is set on mine, and all combined, save what thou must combine by holy marriage. When and where and how we met, we wooed and made exchange of vow. I'll tell thee as we pass, but this I pray, that thou consent to marry us today. So he tells her, tells Friar Laurence, I'm in love with Capulet's daughter. I love her, she loves me. We're together in every way on this except for the fact that you need to marry us. All combined, save what thou must combine by holy marriage. And he says, how the hows of everything, when and where and how we met, we wooed and we made exchange of vow. I'll tell thee as we pass. So he's like, I'll tell you the whole story as we're walking, but I need you to consent to marry us. I need you to agree to marry us today. And Friar Laurence says, holy Saint Francis, what a change is here. Is Rosaline that thou didst so love so dear so soon forsaken? Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. Jesu Maria, what a deal of brine hath washed thy sallow cheeks for Rosaline. How much salt water thrown away in waste to season love that of it doth not taste. The sun not yet thy sighs from heaven clears, thy old groans ring, and yet in my ancient ears. Lo, here upon thy cheek the stain doth sit of an old tear that is not washed off yet. If e'er thou wast thyself and these thine woes, thou and these woes were all for Rosaline, and thou art changed? Pronounce this sentence then. Women may fall when there is no strength in men. So Friar Laurence has given Romeo some crap here. And he's like, what a change is here. Is Rosaline, whom thou didst love so dear, so soon forsaken? He's like, Rosaline, who you love so much, you've already given up on her? Young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts, but in their eyes. He's like, young men don't love with their heart. They love with their eyes. They're going to move on to the next pretty thing that walks on. And he says, what a deal of brine hath washed thy sallow cheeks for Rosaline. Brine is salt water. So he's saying, you've had a lot of salt water on your cheeks, crying over Rosaline, tears. How much salt water thrown away in waste to season love that of it doth not taste. He's like, you've thrown away so much salt water and you haven't even like tasted the love that it was supposed to season. Like the sun not yet thy sighs from heaven clears, thy old groans yet ring in my ancient ears. He's like, the sun hasn't even cleared up all this, and I can still remember how much of this crying you've done. And kind of like, lo, here upon thy cheek the stain doth sit of an old tear that is not washed off yet. He's like, tears of Rosaline haven't even been washed off your cheeks yet. You haven't even washed it off your face. So pronounce this sentence then. Women may fall when there's no strength in men. So he's like, you can't expect a woman to be faithful when men are unreliable. And Romeo says, like, Romeo's kind of sitting there listening to Friar Laurence give him up and down the road, and he's taken aback by it. He's like, thou chidest me oft for loving Rosaline. Chiding is scolding, or like yelling at him. So he's like, you yelled at me all the time because I was in love with Rosalind. And Friar Laurence says, for doting, not for loving, pupil mine. So he's like, I yelled at you for obsessing over her, not for loving her. Romeo says, and bad'st me bury love. He's like, you told me to bury my love. Romeo or Friar Laurence says, not in a grave to lay one in, another out to have. He's like, I didn't tell you to get rid of one love and replace her with another. Romeo says, I pray thee chide not. Her I love now. Doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The other did not so. So he's like, quit yelling at me. You know what? The girl I love now, her I love now, doth grace for grace and love for love allow. The girl I love now loves me back. The other did. Friar Laurence says, oh, she knew well thy love did read by rote that could not spell. So he's like, yeah, she knew you were acting like you were in love instead of actually knowing you were in love. Read by rote. So you could remember the words, but you couldn't actually spell them. So it's like you knew the idea of love, but you didn't actually know what love was. And she knew that. Rosalind knew that. But come, young waverer, come go with me. In one respect I'll thy assistant be. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. He's like, become young waverer. He calls him a waverer. He's like, inconsistent. You keep changing your mind. You flip flop. He's like, come with me. I'll help you for one reason. In one respect, I'll thy assistant be. For this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancor to pure love. If I marry you two off, maybe it'll stop the feuding with your families. And Romeo says, oh, let us hence. I stand on sudden haste. He's like, sweet, let's get out of here. I'm in a hurry. And Friar Laurence says, wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. So he's like, slow down. We're going to get there. People that rush into things have a tendency to fall. And he leaves. Well, they leave. So it's Monday morning now. Friar Laurence is agreeing to marry Romeo and Juliet. Remember, Juliet's 13 years old, Romeo's about 18. They're going to get married only because, even though Friar Laurence knows that it's a terrible idea, knows Romeo probably isn't really in love with her, it'll bring their houses together. And this goes into what I was talking about at the beginning of the scene. Friar Laurence is talking about how every bad thing also has some good in it, and every good thing also has some bad in it. So this bad thing, Friar Laurence does not think this is a good idea, but there's some good in it. The good being that this will stop the feud. So he's going to agree to do it. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Scene 4 is a longer scene. It's about 10 of these pages. So I'm going to make it its own video instead of tying it to scene 3. You'll have the assignment at the end of scene 3. So everybody be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.